The universe had a name for planets like Earth, but never spoke it aloud. It lingered in the silence between star maps, in the way diplomats recoiled at soil samples stamped terra firma, in the claw-marked treaties forbidding human spices beyond the Kuiper Belt. Deathworlds bred survivors, not civilizations, creatures too stubborn to die, too reckless to fear gods or vacuums. Earth's children carried its violence in their marrow, their cuisine a carnivorous art, coffee brewed with venom fungi that hallucinated ancestors, peppers that could strip a Glavian's mucous membranes in one breath. When the Galactic Concord finally acknowledged humanity, it was not with open claws but a bureaucratic sneer. "Prove you're more than your teeth," the missive read. The United Nations sent twins. Zeke and Zelda Morgan's dossier read cultural envoys. Their file, buried under Black Ops encryption, read hazard. They'd marinated in Earth's cruelty, sharpened their tongues on its toxins, and learned a truth their would-be conquerors ignored. The galaxy was a picky eater. It didn't know how to swallow something that bit back. But the Concord had rules. Diplomacy. Restraint. The twins packed live scorpions instead of sidearms, fermented durian as bargaining chips, and a jerky recipe that had once made a Martian warlord weep for his mother. Their ship, the Starward Appetite, stank of ambition and ghost peppers. As they breached the asteroid belt, Zelda calibrated the menu. Zeke sharpened a knife forged from meteorite iron. Somewhere in the dark, a Felis aristocrat licked his fangs, unaware that survival had a flavor, and the galaxy would learn to chew before it swallowed. Chapter 1. The airlock hissed like a dying serpent, and Zeke Morgan tasted copper. Not blood yet, but the metallic tang of recycled ship oxygen, stale and accusing. He adjusted the holster strapped to his thigh, its weight familiar as regret. The weapon inside wasn't a gun. It was worse, a titanium spice grinder, its edges serrated from a decade of crushing Himalayan salt, Carolina Reapers, and the brittle carapaces of creatures no sane human would call food. Zelda's voice cut through the fog of his brooding. "Stop fiddling. You'll drop the scorpions." She stood at the ship's viewport, back rigid, her silhouette framed by the cold jewel of the Galactic Concord station. Her fingers traced the scar beneath her collarbone, a habit when she lied. The station's lights glinted off her chef's whites, bleached to surgical perfection. To the aliens waiting beyond, she'd look pristine. Only Zeke knew the stains beneath engine grease, ash from the wildfire that took their squad, the phantom sweat of 100 Deathworlds. "Their snacks," Zeke said, hefting the cryo-crate. Inside, Terran Emperor scorpions clattered against the glass, venom-dripping tails lashing. "You think the Felis'll puke? They've got 9 lives. They'll survive." Zelda didn't turn. The viewport reflected her face, sharp as a scalpel, eyes the gray of a storm-strangled sky. "We won't. If this fails, Earth loses the Ceres colonies." Zeke's jaw tightened. Fail. The word hung between them, fat and venomous. He remembered the last time they'd stood back to back in a lockdown, smoke choking the air, Zelda's voice calm as she rerouted power to the escape pods, his voice screaming at her to leave the wounded behind. She hadn't. They'd all died anyway. The ship's AI chimed. "Docking complete. Prepare for cultural exchange protocol." Zelda pivoted, her boots silent on the grating. "Remember the mission. Feed the cats. Don't get clawed. No. Observe. The Felis are hiding something in their cargo manifests. If they're arming the Kuiper rebels, we'll sniff it out. Like old times." He forced a grin, brittle as an eggshell. She didn't smile back. The docking bay smelled of antiseptic and alien musk. Concord officials flanked the ramp, a gaggle of Jovian siphonophores, their gelatinous bodies quivering under climate suits, and a hulking Gliese 581G Sentinel, its obsidian carapace scarred by asteroid combat. None approached. Deathworlders, after all, carried plagues. Zeke's boots clanged on the ramp, the sound too loud in the vaulted chamber. His pulse thrummed, a war drum in his ears. The scorpions hissed. Envoy Morgan Zeta droned a siphonophore, its translator pendant glowing cyan. Your sustenance violates Concord Safety Statute 45B. Zelda stepped forward, her posture ablade. Human cuisine is an art of risk. Statute 45B exempts cultural artifacts. She lifted a vial of ghost pepper flakes. This is Terran heritage. The siphonophore recoiled, tentacles spasming. Zeke bit his tongue. Heritage. The lie was elegant, Zelda's specialty. Their real heritage was written in the burn scars on his palms, the way she still woke gasping from nightmares of phosphorus bombs. A new voice purred from the shadows. How quaint. Lord Vexir emerged, velvet-pawed and smug, his Felis delegation slinking behind. His fur was oil-spill black, threaded with silver at the jowls, a patriarch in his prime, 7 lives still gleaming in his slit-pupilled eyes. Zeke's gut churned. Felis always looked hungry. Barbarians playing chef, Vexir drawled, examining his claws. Does your cuisine include how to die screaming in vacuum? Zelda's face stayed neutral, but Zeke saw the flicker in her throat, the telltale swallow she'd had since childhood, when their father's shuttle crashed and she'd spent 3 days rationing algae tablets to keep him alive. Terrans don't die easy, Zeke said, hefting the crate. A scorpion rammed its stinger against the glass. We adapt. Vexir's tail twitched. Adaptation is for cockroaches. The Felis evolve. He leaned close, his breath reeking of synthetic protein. But do entertain us. Watching you choke on poison might elevate the summit. The siphonophore trilled anxiously. The council awaits. The summit hall was a mausoleum of light, glass-domed, star-strewn, its vaulted ceilings arched like the ribs of some colossal beast. Delegates perched on bioluminescent daises, gas giant dwellers in pressurized orbs, methane breathers flickering inside quartz exoskeletons, all here to debate humanity's fate, all staring as the twins approached. Zelda's stride never wavered, but her knuckles whitened around the jerky case. Zeke knew that look. She was counting exits, threats, the milliseconds it would take to snap Vexir's neck if he lunged. Old habits. The human dais was a slab of raw lunar basalt, jagged and isolated. A message, you don't belong here. Zeke set the crate down. The scorpion seethed. Lovely decor, he muttered. Think they'd notice if we stole a chandelier. Zelda ignored him, calibrating the holographic menu. Her hands moved with surgical precision, but her eyes were distant. He wondered if she saw the same ghosts here, the faces of their squad, the ones they'd failed. Captain Rios, who'd taught them to hotwire a warp core. Kaito, who'd smuggled a kitten aboard the Icarus, all ash now. The Felis delegation lounged across the hall, Vexir preening under the attention of a timid Procyon ambassador. Zelda's gaze narrowed. He's stalling, she murmured. The Felis haven't submitted their trade logs. If they're running weapons, we'll follow protocol. Zeke cracked the cryo crate seal. Frost curled into the air. Distract, disarm, devour. This isn't a black op, isn't it? He grinned, all teeth. The siphonophore chairperson chimed. Envoy Morgan Zeta, present your offering. Zelda inhaled. For a heartbeat, her mask slipped, eyes closed, lips moving soundlessly. A prayer, a countdown. Then she straightened. Humanity's strength, she announced, isn't in weapons, it's in our will to endure. She opened the jerky case. The scent hit like a neutron bomb. Smoked ghost peppers, garlic forged in hellfire. The earthy reek of meat that had fought the butcher. Delegates recoiled. A Glavian delegate's mucous membranes burst. Zeke seized a scorpion, its tail lashed, venom glistening. He met Vexir's gaze. Tuesday brunch, he said, and swallowed it alive. The chamber erupted. Chaos was an old friend. Zeke relished the screams, the gagging, the way Vexir's fur bristled. But Zelda was stillness incarnate, her eyes locked on the Felis, observing. Vexir lunged onto the dais, claws unsheathed. "You insect, you think this proves anything?" Zeke wiped venom from his lips. "Proves we're harder to kill." The Felis lord's snarl trembled, not with rage, Zeke realized, but pain. His pupils dilated, throat convulsing. Zelda breathed. Vexir retched. A flicker of flame sparked between his fangs, then the world burned. Chapter 2. The air tasted of burnt sugar and panic. Zeke's lungs seized as Vexir's flame licked the council dais, molten spittle, eating through lunar basalt like acid through bone. The Felis lord convulsed, his aristocratic poise unraveling into something primal, feral, a beast caught between evolution and extinction. His throat pulsed, embers glowing beneath velvet fur, and Zelda's hand clamped onto Zeke's wrist, her grip a lifeline. "Don't move." He heard the command in her silence. Her eyes flickered toward the exits, calculating trajectories through the screaming throng of delegates. A Jovian skeptonophore burst its climate suit, gelatinous flesh sizzling where Vexir's stray flames kissed it. The Gliese sentinel bellowed, its obsidian carapace cracking under the heat. Zeke's pulse roared, but his sister's stillness anchored him. She had always been the compass in the storm, the steady hand suturing wounds while he cauterized them. Vexir collapsed, claws scrabbling at his throat. A thread of smoke curled from his jaws. "Poison," he rasped, pupils slit to venomous threads. "Human treachery." Zelda released Zeke's wrist. Her voice cut through the chaos, cold and clean as a scalpel. "Your biology is rejecting the capsaicin. Let us help." A lie. Zeke recognized the lilt in her tone, the same one she'd used to calm him when their father's shuttle went dark. But the Felis delegation hissed, fur bristling, tails lashing. One, smaller than the others, a scarred female with a missing ear, locked eyes with Zeke. Her gaze held no malice, only a weary recognition. "You've seen this before," he thought. The cost of pride. Zeke reached into the cryo crate. The surviving scorpions writhed, their chitinous bodies clattering like dried bones. He seized one, its stinger punching through his glove, venom burning into his bloodstream. A familiar fire, a Tuesday morning ache. He'd built tolerance through years of reckless ingestion, but the Felis hadn't. "Swallow this," he growled, thrusting the scorpion toward Vexir. "Venom neutralizes the peppers." The Felis lord snarled, but pain made him desperate. He bit down, the crunch echoing like a gunshot. For a heartbeat, silence reigned. Then Vexir gagged, his body arching as if electrocuted. Zeke braced for another inferno. Instead the Felis stilled, his breathing steadied, the embers beneath his fur dimming to a smolder. The delegates froze, a galaxy of eyes wide with terror and fascination. "You see," Zelda's voice rang out, sharp as shattered glass. "Humanity doesn't hide from fire, we harness it." Vexir rose, swaying, his remaining lives flickering behind his eyes like dying stars. He spat a glob of blackened venom at Zeke's feet. "This changes nothing, insect. You've made an enemy of the Felis ascendancy." Zeke grinned, blood on his teeth. "An enemy? Nah, you're just a bad Yelp review." The scarred Felis female coughed, a sound almost like laughter. The twins' quarters aboard the Starward Appetite were a shrine to controlled chaos. Dried herbs hung from the ceiling, their earthy musk mingling with the sharp tang of fermented krill sauce. Zelda paced, her boots scuffing the steel grates, while Zeke sterilized the scorpion sting with vodka. "They'll retaliate," she said. Not a warning, a fact. They already did. He nodded to the viewport, where the skeletal remains of the Cirrus colony floated in the distance, its orbital farms picked clean by Felis privateers. "But now they know we bite back." Zelda paused, her reflection fractured in the fractured glass. Vexir's ninth life. Did you see it? Zeke stiffened. Felis' lives weren't linear. They flickered in the iris, a faint staccato glow. Most aristocrats hoarded them, spending lives like currency. But Vexir's ninth had pulsed weakly, a guttering candle. He's dying, Zeke said. No, he's afraid. She turned, her chef's whites traded for tactical blacks, the scar beneath her collarbone a pale river on scarred terrain. Fear makes predators desperate. The ship lurched. Emergency lights bathed the room in crimson. Zeke's spice grinder rolled off the table, clattering to the floor. Proximity alert, droned the AI. Unauthorized vessel docking. Zelda moved first, a blur of muscle memory. She palmed a vial of powdered Carolina Reaper from the spice rack, a weapon, not a seasoning, and tossed Zeke the grinder. Kuiper rebels, he asked, though he already knew. Felis, her smile was a knife's edge. They've come for the recipe. The ambush was a symphony of precision. Felis boarders poured through the airlock, silent as shadows, their retractable claws glinting. Zeke fought like a cornered animal, grinding chili powder into clouds of lung-searing mist, while Zelda dismantled their tech with a soldering torch and sheer spite. But there were too many. A claw grazed Zeke's temple, warmth trickling down his neck. He stumbled, vision swimming, and caught a glimpse of Zelda at the helm. Her fingers flew across the nav console, rerouting power, her lips moving in silent calculation. 3 seconds to warp. 2. A Felis pounced, fangs bared. Zeke lunged, grinder raised, and Zelda met his eyes. She triggered the emergency thrusters. The ship bucked, hurling boarders into the void. But the Felis clawing at Zeke clung on, hissing. Zelda's hand closed around a live wire, her other slamming the airlock override. Zelda, don't! The vacuum swallowed his scream. Consciousness returned in shards. Zeke's mouth was full of blood and static. The starward appetite listed, its hull groaning, half the viewport sheared away. The Felis boarder lay dead, eyes frozen wide. Zelda's station was empty. Her scarf fluttered in the debris field, navy blue, singed at the edges. He'd given it to her on their first deep space mission, a joke about chef's formal wear. She'd never taken it off. The comms crackled, a Felis voice, velvet and venom. Your sister is ours, human. Come quietly, and we'll make her death artistic. Zeke's hands shook, not from fear, from the void where rage should have been. He'd felt this numbness once before, watching the Icarus burn. A shadow shifted in the ruined airlock. The scarred Felis female stepped through, her fur matted with frost. She held no weapon, only a data chip etched with Felis hieroglyphs. Cora, she said, tapping her chest. Her voice was a rasp, as if fire had scorched her throat. I am dishonored. 8 lives spent. Zeke stared. Felis didn't surrender. They didn't defect. Why? He croaked. She pointed to Zelda's scarf, drifting in the void. Your pack bond. It's unbroken. Even now, her claws retracted, a gesture of vulnerability. Vexir would burn galaxies to hide his weakness. I would see him kneel. Zeke retrieved the scarf. It smelled of ghost peppers and Zelda's shampoo. You got a ship? He asked. Cora bared her fangs, not a threat, but a grin. I have better. I have hunger. The Felis dreadnought hung in high orbit over a gas giant, its obsidian hull rippling with bioluminescent sigils. Zeke's stolen shuttle docked in its belly, a parasite in the gut of a god. Cora led him through dripping, organic corridors that pulsed like veins, the air thick with pheromones and decay. Vexir keeps prisoners here, she hissed, claws extruding to pick a lock. Where screams feed the engines. Zeke's gut churned. The walls whispered with memories. Zelda stitching his wounds after a scorpion farm raid.
her hand steady, even as her own ribs screamed from a plasma burn. "You're an idiot," she'd said, "but you're my idiot."
They found her in a gel-filled chamber, suspended like a specimen, her skin pricked with feeding tubes. Felis science, part torture, part perverse curiosity. Her eyes opened, fogged with drugs but sharpening at the sight of him. "Took you long enough," her smirk said. Cora severed the tubes. Zelda collapsed into Zeke's arms, her breath shallow. "Man, the spice rack," she slurred. "They took the jerky." A roar shook the chamber. Vexir loomed in the doorway, his fur bristling, flame dancing in his gullet. "Clever pest," he snarled. "But this carcass has claws." Zeke tightened his grip on Zelda. Cora stepped between them, her scarred face defiant. "8 lives I gave you," she spat at Vexir. "The 9th is mine." The Felis Lord lunged. Chapter 3. The air in the Felis dreadnought was thick with the stench of burning fur and overcooked pride. Zeke's arms trembled under Zelda's weight, her breath shallow against his neck, a fragile rhythm that anchored him to the present. Cora stood between them and Vexir, her scarred body a living barricade, her remaining life flickering in her eyes like the last ember in a dead fire. The chamber's walls pulsed with bioluminescent veins, casting sickly green light over Vexir's contorted snarl. Flames simmered in his gullet, a furnace stoked by humiliation. "This is how it ends," Zeke thought. Not in the vacuum of some honorable battlefield, but in the belly of a glorified litter box, choking on cat hair and regret. Vexir lunged. Cora met him mid-air, claws unsheathed, a feral scream tearing from her throat. Their collision was a cacophony of snapping sinew and guttural hisses, a dance of predator and prey where both roles blurred. Zeke stumbled backward, Zelda's fingers digging into his shoulder as she fought to stand. "Reactor core," she rasped, her voice sandpapered raw by Felis drugs. "Override the coolant systems. Flood it." He didn't ask how she knew. Zelda always knew. Enemy schematics, weak points, the exact pressure needed to pop a Kuiper rebel's kneecap. It was her language, her art. He hauled her toward the corridor, their boots slipping on gel-coated floors. Behind them, Cora's snarls dissolved into wet, ragged gasps. The dreadnought's corridors were alive, walls contracting like a giant's esophagus, bioluminescent mucus squelching underfoot. Zeke's mind fractured under the sensory assault, the reek of Felis pheromones, Zelda's labored breathing, the ghost of Captain Rias's laughter in his ear. "You're a shit soldier, Morgan, but you make one hell of a distraction." They reached a spiraling ramp, its edges studded with bony protrusions. Above, the reactor core glowed like a diseased sun, its pulse throbbing in time with Zeke's headache. Zelda shoved him forward, her strength resurfacing in bursts. "Vents," she coughed. "Flood them with chili powder." He blinked. "What?" "Their fire breath. It's unstable. Overload their systems." Her grin was a bloodied crescent. "Give them indigestion." The dreadnought shuddered, a metallic howl reverberating through its ribs. Distant explosions, Cora's last stand, buying time with teeth and spite. Zeke's hands found the spice grinder still strapped to his thigh, its ridges biting into his palm. Distract, disarm, devour. He climbed. The reactor core was a cathedral of hubris. Fleshy tendrils coiled around a crystalline heart, pumping viscous coolant through translucent veins. Felis engineers scrambled, their fur singed, nostrils flaring at Zeke's approach. He unscrewed the grinder. "Carolina, Reaper powder," dusting his sleeves. "Chef special," he muttered, and hurled it into the vents. The world ignited. Chilly clouds billowed, searing the air, clawing into Felis' lungs. Their fire breath backfired, flames erupting inward, melting flesh and metal alike. Alarms wailed, a dissonant choir.
Zeke pressed onward, eyes streaming, skin blistering, until he reached the coolant console. The controls were Felis hieroglyphs, snarling faces, coiled tails. Zelda's voice ghosted through his comm. Third glyph. Looks like a hairball. He choked on a laugh, blood and ash in his throat, and slammed his fist down. Coolant surged. Frost spiderwebbed across the core, encasing tendrils in ice, the reactor's pulse slowing to a death rattle. Zeke turned, breath crystallizing, and saw Vexir in the doorway. The Felis Lord was a ruin. 4 lives extinguished, his fur patchy, one eye milky with cataracts. Flames guttered in his throat, weak as a matchstick. You, he spat, are insufferable. Zeke grinned, Yelp reviews still pending. Vexir lunged, claws raking Zeke's chest. They fell, grappling, rolling into the frozen tendrils. Zeke's grip slipped on ice and blood, Vexir's fangs snapping an inch from his jugular. Somewhere beyond the pain, he heard Zelda's voice, faint but relentless, guiding him through the comm. Left, duck, now. He headbutted Vexir's wounded eye. The Felis recoiled, howling, and Zeke seized a shard of fractured coolant pipe. 9 lives, he hissed, driving the shard downward. But you only lived once. The pipe pierced Vexir's chest. The Felis Lord stiffened, flame dying in his gullet, his remaining lives winking out one by one. His final breath fogged the air, a whisper. Adapt. Not. Zelda found him minutes later, half frozen, Vexir's body stiffening at his feet. She dragged him upright, her hands steady, despite the burns mottling her arms. Cora, he slurred. Gone. Took 3 Felis with her. Zelda's voice cracked. She thanked me, said it was a good death. The dreadnought groaned, its organic hull decaying, bioluminescence, fading to corpse gray. They limped toward the escape pods, past Felis crewmen fleeing in silence, their arrogance extinguished. In the pod, Zeke stared at his reflection in the viewport, bloodied, hollow, alive.
Zelda input coordinates for the Concord station, her fingers trembling. They'll exile us, she said. Nah. He leaned back, the spice grinder cold in his hand. We're too tasty. She didn't smile, but her shoulder pressed against his, a silent covenant. As the pod jettisoned, the dreadnought imploded, a final fireball blooming like a dying star. Zeke closed his eyes. Somewhere in the ashes, Cora's laughter echoed. Chapter 4. The escape pod was a tomb of frost and static. Zeke's breath crystallized in the air, each exhale a fleeting ghost, while Zelda hunched over the navigation panel, her fingers tapping a silent requiem on cracked keys. The remains of the Felis dreadnought drifted behind them, a carcass picked clean by its own fire, its bioluminescent veins dark as old blood. Zeke pressed a wad of charred fabric to the gash on his chest, the pain a distant throb beneath the numbness. Cora's final roar still echoed in his skull, a sound that had carved itself into his bones, part war cry, part elegy. Should have been me, he thought. Not the Felis defector with her 8 lives spent, not Zelda's scars, not the ash of their squad still clinging to his lungs. The pod's sensors beeped weakly, a human freighter blinking into range on the starboard screen. Salvation, or another kind of reckoning. Zelda didn't look up. They'll debrief us, dissect every move. They'll try, Zeke muttered. The freighter's hull loomed, pockmarked by asteroid scars, its docking bay yawning open like a steel mouth. He wondered if it would taste like home. The freighter's med bay reeked of antiseptic and burnt time. A field medic, her face obscured by a filtration mask, stitched Zeke's wound with hands steadier than his heartbeat. Zelda stood at the viewport, her reflection a pale smudge against the void. She'd scrubbed the Felis gel from her skin, but her eyes remained haunted. The gray deepened to storm clouds. They're calling it the Pepper Protocol, the medic said. nodding to a hollow screen flickering with news feeds. The Galactic Concord logo spun lazily, headlines screaming, "Humanity patents Felis flame starter, war averted through culinary ingenuity." Zeke barked a laugh that turned into a wince. "We're selling jerky as a peace treaty." "Adaptation," Zelda murmured, her voice raw. She touched the scar beneath her collarbone, the one that mapped her lies. "The Felis will call it surrender. The Concord will call it progress. We'll call it Tuesday." The medic left. Silence pooled, thick as engine grease. Zeke flexed his hand, the spice grinder's absence an itch he couldn't scratch. "What happens now?" Zelda turned. For a heartbeat she was 12 again, staring at the wreckage of their father's shuttle, algae tablets clutched in her fist. "We survive, like always." The Galactic Concord station had been scrubbed clean of fire and fear. Delegates floated through the atrium in curated silence, their stares sharp as scalpels. The twins' boots echoed too loud on the polished floor, a Deathworlders cadence. The human dais was no longer basalt, it was marble, veined with gold, a stage for martyrs or mascots. The Sci-Fi chairperson undulated forward, tentacles quivering. "Envoy Morgan Zeta, your actions have complicated the peace." Zelda stepped onto the dais, her chef's whites replaced by a diplomat's blacks, the fabric swallowing her frame. Peace was never the goal, survival was. Holograms flickered, footage of Felis ships retreating from human colonies, their hulls glazed with ice from the reactor's coolant flood. The jerky accords, the pundits named it, a ceasefire brokered by capsaicin and shame. Zeke's jaw tightened. Cora should be here, she earned this. A Felis delegate emerged from the shadows, smaller than Vexir, her fur singed copper, the scarred female from the docking bay. She inclined her head, a gesture neither apology nor threat. "The ascendancy acknowledges humanity's resilience." Zelda's smile was a blade. "Send our regards to the Yelp reviews." The delegate's tail twitched, a laugh, a warning. She tossed a data chip onto the dais, a gift from the dishonored. Zeke snatched it before the Sci-Fi could protest. The chip hummed, warm as a heartbeat. Cora's final intel, Felis trade routes, rebel alliances, every secret Vexir had burned to hide. "Tell your ascendancy," Zelda said, "we'll take payment in spices." Myra's dawn was a bruise on the horizon, amber and unforgiving. The twins stood on a cliff's edge, salt wind clawing at their clothes, the freighter's engines a dull roar behind them. The UN had offered promotions, medals, a cushy desk job parsing alien threats. Zelda had burned the offer letter in the ship's incinerator. Zeke crushed a ghost pepper between his fingers, letting the oil sting his cuts. "Think they'll come back? The Felis, I mean." "Yes." Zelda crouched, sifting volcanic soil through her hands. "But they'll bring better recipes." He grinned. The pain in his chest had dulled to an ache, the kind that lingered but didn't cripple. Below them, the ocean churned, whitecaps fanged and hungry. Survival, he thought, wasn't about outrunning the storm. It was about learning to sail in its teeth. A comms alert buzzed. Zelda glanced at the screen. A Felis encryption code, 9 lives blinking in the corner. "Vexir's replacement," she said, her voice flat, "asking for a jerky shipment. Extra spicy." Zeke lobbed the pepper into the wind. "Tell him it'll cost extra." They built a fire that night, the flames painting their faces in gold and shadow. Zelda skewered scorpions on a rusted spit, their venom sizzling into the coals. Zeke sprinkled chili powder like a benediction. "To Cora," he said, "to Rios, Kaito, all the idiots who followed us." Zelda's voice wavered, just once. The smoke curled upward, a ribbon against the stars. Somewhere, in the vast and hungry dark, A Felis dreadnought crackled to life, its engines flavored with Terran fire. Survival, Zeke thought, tasted like redemption.